Thank you, Heather. Welcome, everybody. We're so pleased that you could join us for the first webinar of the fall semester. This is a joint collaboration between AGU and AGI, and we're very pleased that you're able to spend some time with us this afternoon. Today, we're going to be talking about different ways in which two-year colleges and four-year colleges have been collaborating to have really great programs and share their resources. And our panelists for today's discussion are two fantastic colleagues who teach at two-year colleges. The first one is Allison Beauregard, and she's a faculty at Northwest Florida State College. And our second panelist today is Joshua Villalobos at El Paso Community College. Between them, they have a wealth of information and advice on how you can collaborate with your nearby four-year campus, but they have advice not only for two-year college faculty, but also for those of you who are joining us from four-year colleges. So without further ado, Allison, take it away.
Thank you so much, Pranati. Heather, you can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. As Pranati mentioned, I'm at a community college, at a two-year college, and for me the biggest drivers of trying to connect and collaborate with other institutions was to help me start a research program. It's why we all went into science. It's about having students learn through doing. It's about letting them use the scientific method and passing on the excitement of being the first person to look at new data. But being at a two-year college, it makes research challenging. So things like scarce departmental funds and lack of institutional support and lack of a research culture, no assistance with grant writing and administration tasks, made it really tough. I also have a heavy teaching load. I have a really small department, and so I don't have a lot of colleagues that I can sort of maintain my connection to current research with and also kind of use as mentors and role models about how to do this sort of thing. So as a way to overcome some of the obstacles, I started collaborating on projects with faculty from both a university and from a research institution. And so what I want to share with you today are these two types of institutions that I've been working with and how I went about doing that and what the types of programs that we have. Next slide. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the first of these partnerships is with a scientist at an international level research institution. She's at the Marine Biological Lab in Woods Hole, Massachusetts. The project was funded through the National Science Foundation, and I was a PI on the project, and my part of the project represented the broader impacts part that NSF requires. So it was unique in that it was a very meaningful broader impacts part. There are a couple of different parts to the project. First, my colleague from MBL, Julie Huber, was and continues to be, as her schedule allows, an active part of my oceanography course. So we've had several Skype chat sessions during class periods where Julie would explain to my students what she was working on and some interesting research findings. During one of the chat sessions, she actually Skyped us from out at sea on a research vessel, which was really exciting for them. My students were able to keep up with the ship through internet blogs from Julie herself and other members of the research team, and she even sent us some data that she had just collected and then went through and explained what it meant and why it was so exciting. So my students were really excited about that because they felt like they were, you know, before anybody else knew what they had found, they were getting to discover that as well. And then as sort of a souvenir and take-home thing, we decorated styrofoam cups and we sent them to Julie on the ship, and then she attached them to one of our instruments that got deployed to the bottom of the ocean, and then, as many of you probably know, they shrink down to little teeny tiny cups because of the pressures. And then she sent them back, so the students got to experience that and have sort of a souvenir of the experience. I also developed a curriculum module on hydrothermal vents, which is what Julie studies, that's geared towards two-year college instruction. It includes everything from PowerPoint presentations with lecture notes, a couple of lab activities, a Google Ocean module that tracks one of her cruises. The module was pilot tested by over 700 two-year college students and has been disseminated to over 150 two-year college instructors. And then the last part of the project was we created a summer internship program, and we sent 4 of my community college students to work in her lab in Massachusetts for 10 weeks in the summer. Each of the students worked on their own projects, and it was really kind of a life-changing experience for them, and it was something that I couldn't offer to them by myself. I was only able to offer it because of the collaboration. Next slide, please. The other collaboration partnership that I have is with a regional four-year university located near my campus. There are 2 parts to this collaboration. In the first part, we incorporated research into a new course called Aquatic Environmental Science at the 2-year college. That project was funded by NSF as well through the ATE program, and the course involved tiered mentoring. So we had a graduate student as well as a faculty member from the 4-year college, and myself taught the course. We call that sort of a tiered mentoring thing. It was less intimidating and easy for my students to talk with the graduate student, and I think it was helpful for them because they could see the graduate student as a real person and think about their own future and think, well, maybe I could actually do that because here's a young person like me who's doing it. It was also beneficial because it built a relationship between my students and the faculty member at the 4-year university, so they could ask questions about the program, about classes, about transferring and things like that. And it gave the UWF people a chance to interact with our students, so they could see firsthand the kinds of things that our students need, their motivations, their abilities, and they could identify specific students that they could recruit into their program to transfer. The other part of that collaboration is a long-term research project. We have looked at the potential biogeochemical factors that contribute to red tides in our area. So we chose a topic that my colleague and I both have a lot of experience with, but also something that the students could really relate to. They had heard about red tides in the news and they were interested in why it happened, and then we can almost sort of sneak a little science and biogeochemistry in there for them to learn. Over the course of the 8-year project, we've had 27 community college student interns work on the project. We've had a few undergraduate students from the 4-year school work over at the 2-year college in the lab, helping and assisting with the research projects. And then we've had several graduate theses come out of the project. It's really great because, again, we can offer them this sort of tiered mentoring where the students get to see first undergraduates at a 4-year college, and then they also get to see graduate students at another university. They get experience collecting and analyzing water samples and phytoplankton samples, and a couple of my students have presented some of their data at a regional scientific conference as well. Next slide, please. So there are huge benefits that I found in the collaborations with the 4-year partner and the research partner. For me, one of the biggest benefits that I've had is access to my colleagues' grant resources, things like their institutional research board, knowledge of the grant writing process, even the basics of how to use Fastlane. And especially for my first couple of proposals, I found the assistance to be invaluable. For the 2-year college participants that we have in the group, I want to make clear that I'm not from, there's sort of different levels of community colleges I found, and there's some that are really active in doing a lot of research and getting a lot of funding from external sources, and that's not the kind of community college that I'm from. In fact, when I submitted my first proposal, I actually had to call the president of my college and walk him through setting up a Fastlane account because no one had ever done it before. So having the 4-year partner and the research partner really helped us kind of navigate through the process. And as a community college instructor, I think you have to be a little bit proactive and seek out colleagues to collaborate with. So it isn't like oftentimes someone's not going to seek you out because you're just not on their radar. But I think that 2-year college partners can also bring a lot of benefits to the table as well. So benefits that I think my partners have gained are things like student recruitment. As more and more students start their college careers at community colleges, this one is getting even more important. It's a way that university faculty can promote their programs to our students. In Florida, this has been really important in the last few months. There's a new state regulation that the universities are getting their state funding based in part on how quickly they graduate students, but the state is not including two-year transfer students into the calculation. So the four-year colleges are finding it to be a huge advantage to recruit from the two-year colleges because they get the tuition benefits without having to worry about how quickly they finish. So that's really positive. Also, my collaborators get access to different funding sources. For example, the ATE program is only available to community colleges, so they have to have a community college partner. Also, some other programs will raise the level of funding if there's a two-year partner on board. So my colleague in Woods Hole believes, she swears, that our project was much more competitive because we had such a unique and a strong broader impact part to the proposal. And we can also do a lot for just a little bit of money, so we don't need huge expenses. A lot of times we can just sort of make do on cable ties and duct tape. And finally, I think that my research colleague, who doesn't do any teaching normally, I think she kind of likes stretching her teaching muscles a little bit, and she likes interacting with my students and the challenge of trying to sort of talk science to non-experts. Next slide, please. Thank you. And my students have responded very positively with when we integrated the research into the courses. We did some pre and post tests, and we showed positive increases in both the content of the course, but also in sort of their willingness to use technology that we used in the course and their comfort level with that, as well as their sort of thinking about going into a career in environmental science. I just put a couple of quotes up about some of the feedback I got from students. In that research class, one of the students said, "You still hold the distinction of facilitating the toughest, most challenging, most rewarding class I've taken in college. The class that you and Dr. S put together is absolutely awesome, and I feel that I'm a better student for being exposed to yours," and his expression. I mean, you can't get better than that, so that was a really positive thing. And one of the students who went on the summer internship program to Massachusetts said that her favorite part of the internship was being able to extract and run DNA on gel by myself. I loved that the postdocs trusted us with the equipment. That really built up my confidence. There's a couple of things that I like in that. I love that my students felt more confident after the 12 weeks in Massachusetts, and just the fact that they even knew what a postdoc was kind of a big change for them, and sort of experiencing the research culture that, again, I couldn't provide them. So if you'll just put it to the last slide, I have to acknowledge my colleagues at both the four-year university and at the research institution, as well as the National Science Foundation. Thank you all.
Hi, thanks again for tuning in. I love talking about some of the work that we've done at El Paso Community College and UTEP. So what I wanted to do was give a little bit of a perspective in terms of how we've done it and some of the challenges that we faced and how we overcame them. So can I have the next slide, please? So for El Paso Community College, Heather, if you can just go ahead and just click on all of those. I didn't realize they were bulleted. Perfect, thank you. So a little bit of the background in terms of our two institutions. So for El Paso Community College, we are actually one of the fastest growing community colleges in the state of Texas. So currently we have somewhere a little over 30,000 students currently attending 5 of our campuses right now. And as you can see, we have a very high minority, where we're almost 90% Hispanics with the 2014 data that we just collected. And what makes El Paso Community College fairly unique within our state is that we actually offer an Associates of Science degree for our students. And we do have majors and we do have graduates, and I'll show that information shortly. When we look at our partner, the University of Texas at El Paso, you can see that the numbers are relatively similar. So we have about the same number of students, and the demographics are also the same. And they also offer an opportunity for our geology graduates at EPCC to enter the bachelor's, master's, and doctoral program. One of the unique things that we've started to realize at El Paso Community College is that recent trends in our student profiles indicate that for the very first time, the median age of our student is now below the age of 25. And so what this trend really illustrates is that more local high school students are entering EPCC than in previous years to start their formal college education. And so this really gave us some really interesting data in order for us to take to UTEP and say that the majority of the students that are attending El Paso Community College are matriculating over to UTEP. And current data that we've collected indicates that roughly about 70% of the students who attend UTEP either started at community college or took some of their basic courses at community college. Can I have the next slide, please? And there's UTEP. So why form the collaborative? So one of the reasons I threw up this map right here is to show you the geographic isolation that UTEP and EPCC have here in Texas. So our students are, when they graduate from high school, they're really limited to which institutions they can really attend within the state. So the majority of them start at community college and then matriculate over to UTEP, since there's really not much of an option for a lot of the lower income students. So when we look at why form the collaborative, other than the fact that we are isolated from the rest of our 2- and 4-year institutions, some of the things that we found that have really helped out because of the collaborative, just like Allison has stated earlier, is that we're able to share resources. So from the 2-year college perspective, the 4-year college actually offers us the opportunity to use equipment and facilities that we just simply couldn't either afford or have space or maintain. So that's the benefit of where the community colleges get from the 4-year institutions. The 4-year institutions actually benefit from the collaboration that we've created here at EPCC, because most of our faculty have a little bit more spare time than the 4-year faculty members, and so whenever we form any type of initiative or project because of this collaborative, the 2-year college faculty can step in and mentor students a little bit more, participate a little bit more out in the field, since the 4-year faculty often are burdened with a few other items that we typically don't have to do, like submitting grants or writing papers. So we've been able to definitely help them out in terms of that. For the enhanced curriculum aspect of the collaborative, it's really helped us in terms of curriculum improvement. So what we were able to do is, from the 2-year college perspective, we can actually go to our peers and ask them what are some new concepts or current trends in geoscience or pedagogy that we can probably integrate into our coursework that we may not be familiar with. And so it also helps us to understand what is it that UTEP is asking our students to come into their program already understanding. So when we go to UTEP and we ask them what they would like our students to already have a grasp on before they enter, for instance, they would like our students to have pre-calculus already completed. So now we can go ahead and integrate a pre-calculus course into our degree plan to help our students better succeed inside those courses that they walk right into. It also allows UTEP to gain students that have a basic understanding of some of the skills that they want their students to have, so that way they don't have to go over those concepts again in their upper division courses like mineralogy or structure, because we've already integrated that into some of our capstone courses here at El Paso Community College. In terms of department dynamics, one of the things that we found that with the collaborative between UTEP and EPCC is that whenever we do projects, initiatives, or other types of collaborative efforts between the two institutions, the El Paso Community College faculty always come back to our institution, and it gives us another rallying point to kind of all get together and discuss and kind of improve our relationships with each other, because oftentimes at two-year colleges, since we have very separate institutions or very separate campuses, that communication level between different faculty members is usually not that strong. So this has really helped our improvement of interdepartmental relationships between our varying campuses. Some of the other things that we've done is that we've improved our increased awareness of our program. So whenever we talk about these collaboratives, what we're able to do is that our students at El Paso Community College, through this collaboration, we are actually able to kind of illustrate what we do with UTEP faculty members. And so our geology students actually get a chance to mingle with UTEP geology students as well as geology faculty members over there. And so that also gives the UTEP faculty members a chance to see what our community college students are not only capable of, but what they're also doing. And so that's been one of the most important aspects of this collaborative, is the ability for us to kind of illustrate on both ends what our students do and what they're capable of doing, and what UTEP is requesting students to come in with, as well as what they can actually achieve once they transfer over. And so with all of these, it actually just improves the quality of the student that actually matriculates over to UTEP, and we have a much higher success rate of our students not only transferring over but also graduating. Next slide, please. So in terms of trying to start a collaborative, I thought it might be a good way to discuss some of the things that we did before we even initiated the collaborative. So one of the things that I think that's extremely important for any two-year college institution's geology program to really implement is to define your department's goals. Whenever you define your department goals, it gives you a benchmark to achieve. And so for an example, I've listed two of the goals that our department at El Paso Community College has implemented. So we really want to ensure that our curriculum between EPCC and UTEP is standard, and so that way our students who take intro-level geology courses, as well as some of our capstone courses like field method and mineralogy, they're getting the same information, and that our students aren't lacking anything once they get over to UTEP. We also wanted to ensure that all of the activities that we do here at El Paso Community College help our students successfully matriculate to the BS degree program at UTEP. So it's the creating of these goals at our department that really allows us to kind of measure our success, not only in the future, but also what we've actually done recently. So another thing that I think all two-year colleges should also do is understand who your students are prior to initiating a collaborative. So one of the things that we wanted to do is we wanted to know what the key demographics are for our students. Do they have any financial issues in terms of financial aid or actually affording college? And also, what are the cultural or social perspectives on STEM degrees? Since community colleges typically have a lot of minority students inside them, a lot of minorities perceive STEM degrees as something not to perceive or not to pursue, and geology in particular. So to give an example, since we are a very predominantly Hispanic culture here at EPCC as well as UTEP, geology often requires students to do field work. And when students go home and tell their parents that they're going to be doing field work has a very negative connotation in terms of what they want their children to do. And so we really have to tell our students that field work is not working in the field, but it's actually collecting data in order to understand, a research project. So that was something that we really had to find a way to elaborate to our minority students. We also wanted to know, where do our students go? And so knowing where your students go after they leave your institution or graduate from your institution is also very important. So are your students transferring to a four-year institution, or are they simply attending your community college to get a certificate, or are they simply attending to get credit so they can transfer over? So knowing that data will actually help you define your collaboration between you and the four-year institution. The last thing is that you really want to be familiar with your future collaborator. So you want to know what types of degrees they offer. Would they actually offer all the way up to a PhD, or is it just a bachelor's? And also, not only what degrees do they offer, but would they be willing to actually do a 2+2? So one of the things that we started here at EPCC several years ago was to create a 2+2 degree plan, where geology majors, once they graduated from EPCC, all of the credit they got from their degree plan transfers over to UTEP's bachelor's program. So once they've graduated from us, they've finished their first 2 years of their VS program at UTEP, and so that's really helped our students as well as the number of majors who have actually come on board for our program. Also, you want to make sure that what are they expecting from the incoming students in terms of their math, in terms of their basic geology understanding is also something that's very important. Financial aid, so since the majority of our students are on financial aid or some type of programs, a lot of times community college students are kind of shocked that when they transfer to the four-year institution, they have to wait at least a semester in order to start to apply for certain scholarships. So a lot of collaboratives between 2- and 4-year colleges offer transfer scholarships to help aid some of these students in terms of the costs between going from the 2 to the 4-year college. And also, I think a very important thing for the 2-year college faculty is that you really should visit the faculty at the 4-year institution. I did not wait for somebody to reach out for me to get this going. This is something that I felt very strongly about, so I was the one that really kind of went over there and really pushed for this. And you know, that's one of the things that the geology community is that we're very open with one another. So going over to the 4-year college faculty and simply just asking about possibly starting a collaborative and what you have to offer and what your students have to offer and what they can actually benefit from is something that I think is very well worthwhile. Next slide, please. So once a collaboration is done, how are you going to go ahead and gauge success? So you can go ahead and just put up all of the rest of it. So I think that there's 2 ways to actually gauge success, and there's going to be a quantitative and a qualitative way of collecting data. And even if you don't form a collaborative, I think it's extremely important for all faculty members to collect quantitative data regarding your institution. So when you collect data regarding your courses and your students, it helps build a stronger case whenever you want to implement new courses or innovative ideas to your administrators. So one of the things that I'm always asking to your college faculty members is to understand or know which department within their institution collects institutional and student data, and not only which department collects this, but the type of data they collect and how it's used. So here in the state of Texas, it used to be that community colleges were funded based on enrollment. Then that changed into the number of students that successfully completed a course, and now we're being funded by the number of graduates. So we now know within our geology department that we really need to focus on the number of graduates we produce, because in terms of the administration, that is what they're going to be looking for, as well as the state. For the qualitative data, quite frankly, the administration or the state really isn't too interested in qualitative data, but it is something that we find extremely valuable in terms of our department, because what the qualitative data does, it helps us understand how we're meeting our goals on a much more personal level. So what we've been able to do is we keep track of our students, primarily our geology majors, and we've done it through various ways such as alumni networks, newsletters. Facebook has been a phenomenal way and a very cheap and easy way to do it, as well as other activities like LinkedIn and etc. Next slide. So this is an example of some data that was presented to some EPCC administrators and to our curriculum committee to justify the creation of one of our more recent capstone courses, which is Mineralogy. So UTEP actually approached us, and they wanted us to make our degree plan a little bit more diversified in terms of the geology offerings. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to compile some of this data to show to our curriculum committee and to our administration that the need for a geology course was not only requested from UTEP, but also it would actually be fairly successful. So on this graph right here, the red line indicates the number of degrees that have been confirmed to geology students here at EPCC over the course of when we first implemented our AS degree plan in 2004. And then the blue bar represents the number of geology majors that have actually enrolled. So currently we're sitting at, this year, we're now at 73 geology majors at El Paso Community College, and that number seems to be increasing. So this was some really good quantitative data that we're able to show to administrators and other members inside our community who are more interested in numbers. The other graph shows the number of students who are geology majors at UTEP, and so we kind of made a correlation in terms of the number of students who have entered UTEP and some key times in our department. So for 2004 is when we implemented our degree plan. In 2010 was when we began some initial collaborative work with UTEP in terms of having our students do research with them. And then 2011 represents when we got funded by the National Science Foundation to implement a research program at El Paso Community College that is very closely tied with this collaborative effort between both institutions. Next slide. So this is the qualitative data. And so this gives you an idea of how we actually collected. So we have two Facebook pages. One is on Solaris, and so this helps promote our Solaris activities to our students. It also gives us a chance to kind of highlight our research milestone and also keep track of our EPC students who are current and past. And so whenever we have a student who is interested in geology, we can always give them this Facebook page, and then they can actually go through it throughout the timeline and see what some of the successes of the students who have actually participated in this collaborative research with EPCC and UTEP, what they've done and where they currently are. And so that's been a great resource for us. And then the second one that we have is another one called GeoVentures El Paso. So this isn't related to the GSA GeoVentures. This is something that is just by El Paso Community College. And so what this program actually does is that it helps promote geology courses to non-geology students. And so every semester we offer anywhere between 6 to 10 activities that are both educational and recreational. And so it's really geared to getting non-geology majors interested in geology by having all the geology classes kind of participate in these events. And so it's been very successful. So what we're able to do is quantify a lot of this data because Facebook will send us weekly updates in terms of how many people read the post, how many people commented it, how many people share the post with their friends. And so again, this qualitative data actually produces some quantitative data that we can actually use within our department as well. And so last slide. And so this is my contact information, and as well as Diane Dozier. Diane Dozier is my collaborator at UTEP, so she has been instrumental in helping me create this collaborative, and she almost gave my talk today because I had jury duty, but luckily I got out of it. So if you have any questions, I would love to talk to you about it, or if you want to know anything in terms of what the 4-year perspective was on this collaboration, I'm positive Diane would be happy to discuss that as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Josh and Allison, for your presentations. We're going to open the floor now to the audience for our discussion portion of the webinar. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and press the raise your hand button and I can unmute you. Or you can type in your questions in the question box and I'll be able to read them for our speakers. We have one come in. The first one, let's see, is for Allison. Allison, what can you tell us about the number of students from your college who transferred to the four-year college?
Well, my college, and I think often community colleges in general, don't do a very good job of tracking where the students go. So I don't have any quantitative data, but qualitatively and anecdotally, I know that a lot of my students end up going to our local four-year university. Just from my colleagues over there, they'll say, you know, hey, I've got another one of your students. So in a lot of the students who took that aquatic environmental science course with my colleague helping co-teach, I know several of the students in that class transferred over. One of my personal sort of yay, aha success stories was a student who took that course because of that course applied for the internship in Massachusetts with my other colleague. She was one of the 4 students who went there for the summer. She transferred to the local four-year university, got her degree, and she now works for me, and she's my lab coordinator. So it's come around full circle.
Awesome, thank you. Question for Josh, actually. How much was the administration, like the deans, etc., involved in the development of the 2+2? And did they initiate it, or did the geology faculty? How did that work?
So the 2+2 was initiated. I actually was requested to see about possibly forming a 2+2 by our curriculum committee at El Paso Community College. So our curriculum committee is composed of faculty and administrators here at the institution. And so they started to realize that a lot of institutions were doing these 2+2 programs, and they wanted to know if the geology program would be interested in creating one with us since we had a fairly strong program. And so I went ahead and, you know, went to UTEP and asked them, okay, would you be willing to take these courses and transfer these credits? And then if we did do a degree program, what type of degree program would you want? And that's one of the reasons why we have an Associates of Science and not an Associates of Arts, was primarily because they wanted their students to come out with a fairly strong math background, and so we had to implement the Associates of Science, which I can now throw in a pre-calculus and even a calculus inside there for our students. So in terms of the question, like deans, there were some deans on that committee, but it was pretty much spearheaded by faculty.
All right, great. There are a few questions about making these slides available online. We are actually recording the webinar, and so once we have everything recorded, we will be able to provide this online so you can see the whole discussion in full. We will make that available and email everyone once it's up. Let's see. For Josh, do you also try to coordinate with your other four-year schools?
So we're pretty isolated from other four-year schools. I know there's New Mexico State University that's actually right down the road, but it's a little bit harder for us to do articulation agreements since they're out of state, even though they're just right down the road. So we really haven't reached out to other four-year institutions in order to do the same thing that we have with UTEP, because UTEP is so close, we're in the same state. So the answer is no, that we really haven't reached out to other four-year institutions to kind of replicate or expand or collaborate.
Okay. Allison, can you talk a little bit about the role of research as part of your collaborative? Like, what happens when you're not doing research at your college, or if you don't have research grants?
Well, I've sort of made it a part of what I do. So I continue it going. Right now, I actually am wrapping up the only NSF grant that I have right now. So my funding will be wrapping up unless I get back out there. But it's still part of what I do. I try to incorporate research into my courses as much as possible. So I do that regardless of what the funding is, and usually those are pretty cheap projects. So once I have the equipment from the NSF funding, then I just keep using the same equipment. I'm actually very lucky and unique for a two-year college because I have an endowment, so I still have some funding through a private source that helps keep research going, and so I do that through having my own interns work with me and keep my research going. And so the internship collaboration that I have with UWF, it continues on.
That's awesome. Do you feel like your collaboration helps with like retention rates, even for non-majors as well?
Definitely. I would say most of my students aren't majors. They're taking my courses as just to fulfill their general science requirements. Occasionally there'll be a student who is interested in pursuing this and in going to a four-year university to finish up, and then some of them I change their minds, and so they do want to go to the four-year university. And I think doing research and sort of getting their hands wet and dirty enhances that. And I've had students who really kind of fell in love with doing the research in my classroom, and then they end up applying to work in my lab as an intern and kind of pursue that career.
Awesome. A question for Josh. Did you add mineralogy to your curriculum at UTEP request, or was it offered before the collaboration between the colleges?
Oh, that's a great question. So mineralogy was actually offered about 25 years ago at El Paso Community College for one time. And so it had been on our books but never offered. And so UTEP's enrollment for undergraduate students exploded, and so a lot of their students weren't able to get into the mineralogy class, and they had to wait the following year to take it. And so they asked if we would be able to teach it since it's actually on our books. And so we implemented it. Our faculty member who taught it here loved it. The students also loved it, and the students who took our mineralogy are actually currently in mineralogy at UTEP this semester. So we're getting some good feedback in terms of, did we cover the right material? Could we have covered more? Should we have covered less? And so that's going on currently. But the state actually just removed mineralogy and our other capstone course, geological field methods, from our academic course guideline manual, which means that community colleges can no longer teach those courses anymore. So we're now trying to figure out how to proceed forward by still really offering these really fundamental courses that engage students here at the community college. So.
Yeah, definitely. And did you actually know somewhere to start the conversation at UTEP? Did you have like a prior connection, or how did you navigate that in the beginning?
So I did graduate from UTEP. I got my bachelor's and my master's from UTEP, so I did know the institution fairly well. Some of my professors were still there, and so it did help me facilitate the beginning of the conversation. So I think Diane Dozier, her son attended El Paso Community College, so that really helped out because she understood what we were doing and some of the initiatives that we had. So that definitely benefited the start of the conversation.
Okay. And Allison, I'm not sure if we covered this, but does your institution offer an associate's degree in geology, or do students just take a few courses?
We do not have an associate's degree, so they will just take a few courses and then transfer.
Okay, gotcha. Those are all the questions I have popping up in our question box. Does anyone else have something to say, even a comment? Again, I do have the ability to unmute you if you have a microphone. Just let me know by pressing that raise your hand button, and you can go ahead and speak with our speakers directly. I'll wait a few seconds here to see if we have any more questions pop up. Oh, Dawn. All right, Dawn, I'm going to unmute you. There you go. You're online.
Hello. This is Dawn Cardes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi. Great. So I've been thinking a lot. So I'm at the University of Rhode Island in the Geosciences department, and a close colleague of mine, Karen Kortz, is at CCRI, our community college, really up the road. And it's funny how we sort of coincidentally had a little bit of power to make like a joint articulation agreement. It was the kind of thing like I heard about it one way, she heard about it another way, and we realized that just because we were colleagues, we could make this, happen. So there's something to be said, I know, for just proximity making positive change, I think. But I think what we inherited, or I'm the new kid on the block here. I've only been around 4 years. She's been here longer than I have. But we've inherited, speaking about old course offerings and such, some things that are no longer taught, some things that it might make sense to teach for her or for me. But we're running into a little bit of an institutional barrier, I think, to what I would call truly collaborative teaching efforts across the two institutions. And I think a lot of it's on my side. I have like kind of a strict boundaries around some of my teaching duties right now, and she's been maxed out for a time. Are there other maybe field trip oriented or workshop oriented course formats that any of you have tried that cross disciplines and have had some success? Because I'm curious to learn about that.
Are you saying like cross-discipline, like different, or like cross-institution?
Sorry, cross-institution.
Okay, so one of the things that we do for our field method here at El Paso Community College is that typically UTEP would offer a similar course. So they offer their non-seismic methods about the same time. And so we kind of collaborate, and so we often meet in the field about the same time, and so that way our students get to commingle and they actually get a chance to meet the faculty and use the equipment, and the faculty get a chance to actually meet the two-year college students as well, and so it gives them an idea of what they're capable of doing. And that's fairly successful. In terms of something that has been written down like curriculum-wise, we haven't really developed anything, but that might be a nice step to actually proceed forward with.
Okay, thank you. We have another question from the audience. Vernon Kramer, I'm going to unmute you. You can speak now.
Okay, well, one of the things that Josh and I are running into trouble is, like he mentioned, was the state of Texas is trying to defund a lot of the classes that we're teaching now, and I was wondering if the other states have the same problem.
I haven't run into that in Florida yet.
Let's move to Florida, Vernon.
We're going to have to do something.
We have a question from Steve. Maddox, you're online.
Oh, hi. This is actually Tari Maddox from Grand Rapids Community College.
Ah.
I had a question regarding field trips and field experience. I can't technically require students to attend a field trip, but of course we all know the benefits of being out in the field. And part of the reason I can't require it is because of financial issues for a lot of the students, being unable to go on a field trip. Do you have any insight into that? Has your collaboration allowed maybe more students to go on field trips and go out in the field than normally would be able to?
Allison, do you have anything? I'll talk to you a little bit. Go ahead and go.
I can speak to that a little bit. Sort of officially, my college has the same policy where I can't require students to do that. The way that I have been able to overcome that is that if I make the field trip entirely fit into the class time, then I can require it. And so what I have done is I've been very creative with how I schedule my courses, and so far I've been able to schedule them as I need to. So what I mean by that is the course that that I developed with my UWF colleague, it was entirely sort of based in the field. So we would have one short lecture a week, and then I would have a long lab period every week, like 4 hours, and we would basically, I sort of coordinated with all the students that they could get transportation to the boat dock, and so class would start at the boat dock and it would end at the boat dock, but I would have that whole 4 hours in the field, and by doing it that way then I kind of got around that college policy. And I've been able to do shorter ones as well, where we hop on the vans at the beginning of class time and make a quick run to the beach, do a quick lab activity, and then quickly come back if I have a 2-hour, 2.5-hour class.
So what we were able to do is, I think, just like Allison and you, Don, is that we don't have the, our college does put major limitations in terms of students being out in the field. So for the field methods class, they have to be in the field, so that's something I really had to work around with. So, we have piles of paperwork that they have to sign before they go out. And in terms of, if I have a student who enrolls into the field methods class who has a disability, then I always have to come up with a side project for them to do. So there's 2 different types of projects: the project that my students without disabilities can do, and then the project that a student with disabilities can do. That's rarely the case, but it has happened before, but that student with disabilities receives just the same amount of information. In terms of vehicles, our institution actually had a fleet of vans that were never used because faculty never realized that they were allowed to use them. So I had to actually go through the administration and through our lawyers to actually show the deans that these vehicles were accessible to faculty and that they can drive around students. So that was one of the very first hurdles we had to actually overcome, and really had to do some investigating and phone calls and everything just to get that process going.
Okay, awesome. We have another question in the question box. Do these collaborations allow you both to increase your course offerings in geology? And our participant actually stated that it's a pretty difficult task in Florida where geology is not a very common major. So how are your experiences?
Yeah, Josh, you go ahead.
In terms of course offerings, I mean, we've added our field methods, we added a research course, we've added environmental, we've added the mineralogy, which those 2 main courses are going to be removed from the course or from the core or from our offerings. So I think with the collaboration, it gave us the necessary quantitative data to show our institution that if we did add the course, that there would be a need for it, because I think one of the hardest things to do is to show the administration that if you did add this course, it would fill up and that people would take it, as opposed to just sitting on the books, which is what our institution does not want. So the collaboration did definitely help out, because we were able to say, well, this is what UTEP is requesting us to do. So it just gave us a little bit more ammunition in our court.
Okay, we have a question from Jessica, who is at Hillsborough Community College in Florida. She asked Allison, with the likely changes in course offerings for Gen Ed Common Core, what difficulties, if any, do you see for continuing collaborations with the four-year colleges?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think I will still make it work. For people who aren't in Florida, the Florida state government is basically, they're sort of limiting the number of courses that you can offer at colleges and universities, and so when students have to pick from a menu, there will only be, I think, 5 science classes that they can pick from that will count towards their degree. And so in Geosciences, it will be just the introductory level Earth Science course and the introductory level Environmental Science course that students will kind of bother taking if they're, if they're non-majors. So, we've had a lot of discussions about what that will mean. I'm not sure that it will really impact my ability to keep with the collaborations because I will find a way to tailor my curriculum for whatever course that I am teaching to include some sort of research. So if I'm, if I'm teaching an earth science course, then a lot of the stuff I do will fit into the oceanography section beautifully. And if I'm teaching the environmental science course, then it'll just have an aquatic spin to it. So, I will make it work.
Nice, excellent. Well, there have not been any questions in a while, so we're going to wrap up the discussion portion. Thank you all so much for your participation, and I'll turn the floor over to Pranoti, who will have some last comments.
Thanks, Heather. Thank you, everybody. What a fantastic discussion that was. I thoroughly enjoyed learning about your programs and very insightful questions from the audience. So if you're interested in this topic a little bit more, you may want to join us next month because we're going to talk about how to work towards effective articulation agreements between 2-year and 4-year colleges, so especially related to the geosciences. So I hope you'll be able to join us next month. We typically do these on Friday afternoon, and the next one is on October 24th. So I hope you can participate. And the last slide. And many of you have asked about the recording of today's webinar. It will become available, and as Heather mentioned, that you'll receive an email giving you the link so that you can watch the webinar, or you can forward it to a colleague who was not able to attend. And of course, if you have other questions or comments for the panelists, please email me at pasher@agu.org, and I'll be happy to forward your questions to them. And if you'd like to participate if you're a department chair or department head, or you know somebody who's a department chair or department head and they'd like to join the AGU Heads and Chairs listserv, please let them know to contact me. And of course, we have a workshop at the AGU fall meeting for department chairs, and they're welcome to that as well. So thank you very much, everybody, and have a great weekend. See you next month, I hope.